Stasa23 here. In today's knife therapy, I have for you the Caelum Blade Designs Ari. This knife will be linked down below. The pre-order for it has begun. It's coming in 6 different variations. The one you see here with the stonewash blade and the aluminum carbon fiber. You can also get it with the aluminum carbon fiber with a satin blade. You can get it with a copper carbon fiber and a stonewash or satin blade. You can get it with black micarta with a stonewash or satin blade. The black micarta version is going to come in at $269, and the carbon fiber variations are going to come in at $279. Let's get some quick specs out of the way. You have an overall length of 8.75 inches, so it's a pretty big knife. You have a blade length of 3.65 inches. You have a grip area from here to here of 3.66 inches, or if you go all the way up on it to right here, it's 4.1 inches. You have a handle scale thickness from here to here of 0.50, and if you go up on the inlays, it's 0.56. You have a closed width in the pocket from here to here of 1.33 inches, blade stock thickness of 0.138, and you have a behind the edge thickness of around 23 thousandths around this area to here, and in that tip area is around 28 thousandths. The OEM for the Ari is Kubi Knives. They do good work with their OEM, at least from the ones I've handled and the ones I own. This one has a drop point blade made of S90V Steel, which is a high edge retention, high vanadium carbide steel. And I found that it takes a really good toothy edge, and it lasts a lot longer with a toothy edge, at least in the knives that I've tested. You have a nice top swedge up here, pretty robust tip for maybe light prying, or boring into some wood, or for piercing. You do have a sharpening notch that just barely clears the plunge, but on the final production run, he's going to be moving that up away from the plunge line to give you a little bit more sharpening life before it starts to widen up in the back right here. You do have jimping right here. I would call it moderate traction. It does a little bit. You have a blade hole that we'll talk about later on. I will not be doing my normal testing with this because this is a prototype, and the HRC was ran a little bit soft on this particular prototype. So he said he might send me out one of the newer updated prototypes. The HRC is going to be 61 and no lower than 60. I think that's really good for a high batch production knife. Whenever they start to go over that, you run the risk of warping blades and having some issues in production. So I get it. The cost would go up a good bit if they were going to do these in small batch. So that's what I'm trying to say. All right, let's close it up and take a look at this beautiful action. It's riding on cage ceramic ball bearings. You got a nice drop shut action, well-tuned detent, and you have dual deployments. You have a front flipper and a blade hole. The blade hole is easily accessible, both right-handed and left-handed. The thumb hole is also easily manipulated. I find that I prefer the reverse flick on it just because you have that longer hole. It's easier to get to. I'm not saying it's hard to get to the thumb hole, but it just feels more natural to do a reverse flick if that's something you're comfortable doing. That front flipper works well. Also, the detent is perfectly dialed in for both actions, which you don't see that often. Usually it's either a strong detent for a flipper or a too light of a detent to try to get them right for both of them. But front flipping action, I'm not the best front flipper, and you have enough leverage, and you do have jimping right there to give it a nice rollover. Let's see, I can't do the reach around, and I don't have enough strength there, but you may be able to. All right, let's close it up and take a look at our frame. You have titanium scales that have been bead blasted. They are flat, but they have a chamfer that goes around the entirety of the scales. I think the bead blasting looks nice. The finishing underneath it is nice and clean. They softened the edges on the chamfers, so you don't have any sharp areas where you don't want them to be. You have a inlay of what they're calling aluminum carbon fiber, but it's like an aluminum foil that is embedded in that carbon fiber. And I will say it's very attractive. It really, when it's not in this type of setting, it really shimmers in the light. Whenever you turn it, it's almost like a 3D effect. You have a nice decorative pivot. Very cool there. And a decorative pivot collar. I'm guessing that's all that's for, and to hold down this inlay. Also on the final production, this screw right here will be coated black so it blends in with the inlay. The inlay does sit proud of the scales, not hurting anything. I would have preferred it to be inset and flush, but the way it stands is fine. Your hardware is all T8. Your pocket clip is a milled titanium pocket clip that is tip up left or right hand carry. And on the final production run, there will be a filler tab here. And also on the final production run, they will have a second screw holding this clip down, because right now it has a little bit of wiggle, and that should prevent that. I love that they put the lock bar relief cutout on the inside. It keeps this scale looking nice and clean. Wish more companies would do that. Now let's take a look at it in the pocket. One thing that I did notice whenever I was putting it in and out of my thin shorts and my jeans is that the spring tension on this pocket clip isn't that strong, and it's kind of slick underneath there, so it's not the best grip. Now the knife is, weighty, so it's going to stay down in there, and that's how much you have sticking out of the pocket, and you don't have anything that's going to, poke into your hands when you put your hand in the pocket. You have an open back construction with two standoffs right here. So if you want to clean it out with some compressed air or maybe a Q-tip, that'll be fairly easy. Let's open it up and check out the inside. You have a good bit of skeletonization on the top and the bottom of the scales to keep the balance point where it should be, right up in that area. Now let's check it out on the scale. First off, in grams, 140.3 grams and 4.948 ounces. It's a chunker. You're definitely going to tell you have something in the knife, but it's not unreasonable. Now let's take a look at the lockup. The knife is sitting at around 30-40%. And when I say bank vault lockup, I can't muscle any side to side, no up and down whatsoever. So very, very solid lockup. The access to the lock bar is good because you have this cutout right here. You have a nice soft chamfer right there, and you have enough thickness right there to where it's not going to be too thin to get to that lock bar. You also have a hardened steel lock bar interface that is removable, so if you ever were to wear out that lock interface, you could change it out. Now for some quick size comparisons, we have the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Spyderco PM2. It's close to the length of the Rat Model 1. You have more handle, about the same blade length, but you have more cutting edge on the RE, and it dwarfs the PM2. Pivot to pivot with the Spartan Harsey folder and the Chris Reeve Sabenza 21 large. It's very, very similar in overall length to the Spartan Harsey. The Harsey's a hair longer. You have about the same handle length, and it's a good bit bigger than the 21. Lastly, we have the Real Steel Megalodon and the ZT0640. It's about identical in overall length as the Megalodon. You do have a little bit more cutting edge on the Megalodon, and you have about the same blade length and cutting edge as the 0640, but you have a little bit more handle on the RE. All right, now for my nitpicks and complaints. Even though most of them are already being addressed, a few things that I did notice. First, I would have loved to see this thinned out a little bit more. It's not terrible, and of course, it's more suited for a hard use knife. S90V though, I don't know, it can handle a finer edge, but you know, just depends on what you're looking for. Also, this I would have definitely liked to see this to be a fine cut jimping that's a little bit closer together. It just grips the thumb better, kind of like Riot does on their front flippers. This works just fine, but it would have been a lot better with that finer jimping, in my opinion. Also, I said it already earlier, even though it's not hurting anything functionality, I think it would have looked a little bit nicer with this inlay flush. But, you know, like I said, it's not hurting anything and it still looks good. So, overall, thoughts, opinions of the knife. I think it's a really well-made knife. It has a great action. If you're looking for a heavy user, this is a good option. I think at the $280-ish dollars, I think it's definitely reasonable, especially since they're using S90V and carbon fiber, and you got a pretty high level of fit and finish on the knife. So I definitely don't think you'll be disappointed. Like I said, as long as you are wanting, you know, a more heavier duty knife. I mean, it's a beefy knife. It feels like it could handle some heavy duty work. Kind of feels like the Spartan Horsey in hand. You know, it's a nice chunker. And I don't know, that it's not something that I really go for, but I can definitely appreciate it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day, and I will see y'all on the next one.